Hey everyone, this is Alex USA Days, and we're continuing Playwright automation with TypeScript. And today we're in Module 4, and we're going to talk about Playwright Locators. So Playwright Locators are a powerful and flexible way to find and interact with elements on a web page during automated testing. Playwright provides a high-level API called Locators that simplifies handling dynamic elements, weighting, and visibility. You can get elements by role. You can get them by text. You can get them by label. You can get them by placeholder. You can get them by alt text. Typically, this is used for images. You can get them by title, or you can get them by test ID, which is configurable in the Playwright config if you have a unique test IDs. We're going to take a look more in details at the documentation as we go through the video. Now, when learning about selectors locators, it's essential to understand the fundamental of HTML element structure. There's an opening tag. Now, within this tag, you will have attribute or many attributes or one attribute. And those attributes might have values assigned. Then we will have inner text, and then we will have a closing tag. Expand your HTML code, and you will see multiple HTML elements like this. They will be nested in one another, and there's a way how you can interact with them using CSS and XPath. And Playwright also supports CSS and XPath selectors, even though they do recommend using Playwright locators first. Some examples of the CSS is grabbing by ID, where you would use a hashtag, grabbing by tag, by attribute and the value, or grabbing by class name by putting a dot before the class. There are also possibilities to grab the locators by XPath, and you can match XPath selectors, for example, by tag and by ID, where you would say page.locator, and then within the parentheses, you'll say XPath equals / the tag, then the attribute and the value. So input at ID equals username. And then the action you want to perform, for example, fill the text field with the username. Or you can even match by partial text match by using contains. So the typical locators that you use in, let's say, Selenium, using CSS and XPath are also available in Playwright. Okay, so now let's get into it and try some of those hands-on. I'm going to start with the Playwright documentations for the locators, and it's important to get into a habit of using Playwright doc when you're trying to figure something out and you're not sure how to do something. Going through the documentation and reading about a particular method you're looking into or something that you're trying to do is very important. Make it a good habit. Okay, so here we have all the Playwright built-in locators. And here are some examples. So we're looking here at the button that has a text sign in. And here we will be getting this button by role. So we know the role of this element is button. So we mention it right here after opening parentheses. And then in the additional options, we provide name sign in. So it grabs this text and uses as the name of the button. Here, we can locate by, this is by role, this is another example to get by role. So heading, H3 here, element sign up is a heading element, and with the name sign up, and we are verifying that this element is visible. Then there's a checkbox, and again, we're grabbing it by role. Checkbox and by text subscribe, and the button that we already seen in the previous example. Then we can locate by label. So label is also a tag, and we can say get by label password. And then the advice when to use label locators, use this locator when locating form fields. Locate by placeholder. So placeholder is the text that you will see in the field as an example text before you start putting in your own text. So there's a particular attribute, it's called placeholder, and then you can grab the value by using get by placeholder. And when do we use it? We use this locator when locating form elements that do not have labels but do have placeholders text. So if there's no label you can grab it by, but there's a placeholder, you can use this placeholder. Locate by text. So if there's a visible text on the page, you can also grab by text, an element by text. And then alternative text would be text that typically assigned to images to describe what they are. So there's an alternative text Playwright logo, and you can use await page.get by alt text and grab this value. You can also use by title. So if there is a specific title, you can grab that. But all of those values that we're looking at, right, they are all different forms of attributes, right? There is just an attribute that is an ID. There is just an attribute that is a class name. There is just an attribute that is a title. You just have to understand they all still follow the same structure of a tag, attribute name, attribute value, inner text, and then a closing tag. Locate by test ID. So by default, Playwright uses data-test ID as an attribute. But if your team is using a different test attribute in the HTML, you can provide it in the Playwright config. So you can actually configure your own test attributes that Playwright will use. Okay, and then there's some examples of locating by CSS and by XPath. To have some examples written down, let's use the Internet Heroku app.com/login, the one that we used previously for CodeGen, and in the test folder, in our project, I'm just going to create a file that is called new file locators. .spec.ts. So here we can type out the locators, and we're going to go through some of the examples that we talked about in the slides. So first, let's start the test file so it can run. So we're going to do import test and expect from Playwright test to get it started. And let's just define our first test. So I'm going to name it test examples of Playwright locators. I think this is good. Expand this a little bit. So examples of Playwright locators, async, we have a page. And first step, we're going to navigate, just to navigate to the page to get it started. So await page.goto. And this is where we're going. So the internetheroku.com login. Good. Let's first have some of the examples of built-in locators. I'm gonna say examples of built-in locators. All right, so first one we will do get by role. So let's take a look at this login button. Inspect it, and we see that it is a button, right? And this button has some text. It has text login. So I can get this button by role. Let's create a variable. So const, we're going to store this element inside this variable so we can interact with it later. So login button, and it will be page.get by role. So the role is button. And then in additional options, we want to also provide that it has name, right? Login is the name for it, the text inside the button. So name, login. Okay, and let's add an assertion. So we will assert after the page loads. So we grabbed it by role, we stored it in the variable, then we will assert that this variable is actually visible. Okay, perfect. So let's close this out and just give it a quick run. And see how this goes. I have a typo in the test case name. So it's a spec.ts. Okay, let's give it a run. And it is passed, looking good. Finished, load the page, and asserted that the button is visible. Okay, let's see some other example. We can get by text. Get by text. And let's take a look at some of the text that we have on the page that we can insert on. So there's a login text at the very top right here. So you go click inspect, and it's header 2 text. And we can insert by that as well. We can grab it and insert it. So let's do the same thing. Let's create a variable login header text. And again, store this variable. So page get by text login page. That's the value that we're looking at, right? And we're gonna assert, so await expect login header text to be visible. I can also, let me open a UI actually for this. npx playwright test -- UI. So it's a little bit more visible when the execution happening. So we are again in the locator spec. So let's run it. Let's go into the page. Page is loaded and it highlights. So first it highlights right here the login. You can see it. Right. So it sees the login and then it highlighted the login page text. So login button and login page text and asserted that they exist. Okay, good. So all of those are built in Playwright locators. Some of the examples that we've seen online, we're doing them right now. So next one, let's do number 3, get by label. And for the label, we need to find labels. So here, let's take a look at password field. You can see there are labels here. Label. So the label is assigned to this input field text. There is a label for it. Okay, let's try that. So I'm going to grab it by the label username. So inspect it. You can see there's a username label. Tag is label, and then there's a value username inside. So let's do that. Await. So here I'm not storing it. I'm just directly going and grabbing. So page get by label. Get by label. Username, and then fill the Tom Smith. So login text will go here, and then the password. If we inspect the password field, again, there's a label for password. We're going to grab it by label as well. So, and put the super secret password in there. All right, and let's give it a run. Not everything. So we want to only execute the locators. Start executing all of the test cases. Okay, and we're rerunning it. Only going with the locators. Let's run it. Okay, so you can see it was able to use the label above the input field and then enter the values inside the fields. Okay, looking good. So these are some of the examples that Playwright encourages you to use. So you want to be using the built-in locators first. Now we can give some CSS selectors. CSS selectors examples. Okay, so one of the most common or used is just by ID, right? And we already know. So for example, if we take a look at the username field itself, there's an ID in the field, so we can use that. And then when you use CSS for ID, you just put in the hashtag. Before the ID, you have to put the hashtag. So it would be await page. Now we use locator. And here I can just say hashtag username. So that would be an ID. And I can fill it. So let's fill it with something different. So selected by CSS, something like this. So we visually will see when CSS is typing the value into this field. Okay. You can also use tag and attribute and the value with the CSS selectors as well. So that would be something like this. So here, we're going to say get by ID CSS selector. Get by tag attribute and attribute value. So for that particular example, we're going to take password field, and we're saying it's an tag as input, so it starts with an input tag right here. Then we go names equal password, so name, the attribute name has attribute value password, so right here, name equals value password. And then also we're going to fill selected by CSS as well to that. And let's do by radius. I got to move the comments a little bit. Like this. Okay. So the last one will be get by class name. Also CSS. So if I inspect this button that I will attempt to click, it has a class. It has a bunch of classes, multiple. But one. Okay, so class is radius for the button itself, not for the information element inside of it with a text login, but for the button itself, there's a class radius. So we can use this class name just with CSS. It will be dot radius for selection. Okay, so we'll do await page locator dot click, but not button, but actual class is radius. So it will attempt to run through this. First, it will enter valid login and valid username, but we will not be logging in with those. Then it will reselect it and enter invalid username, invalid password, and then attempt to log in. So let's give it a try. All right. And here we can see this is where we're using Playwright Locators. So the text got filled in for Tom Swiss and password. Then we selected it with CSS locators and updated the values for the username and password and attempted to log in, clicking the button. Yep. But nothing happened because those are invalid credentials. That's where we stop the test case scenario. Okay, and let's do some examples of the XPath selector examples. So first one, let's just do match by ID, by XPath ID. So it will be very similar to the CSS, but instead of using a shortcut hashtag, you actually need to provide the tag where you're starting, so dash dash input, and then you provide @id, which is your attribute name, and then attribute value username. So it will be selecting the same username field, but just spelled out differently because now we're using actual XPath instead of a CSS, right? Okay, let's get also by text match. So get by XPath with text match. So that will be using contains. Okay, so await page.locator. This will be a little bit different. So input, we need to, with Playwright, you can explicitly say XPath equals, or you can just start with a route for the XPath. So input, well, actually, let's put a password. So input contains not name because it was looking at the name. So name password. I don't want the name. I want actual text, but text. Okay, so it's not gonna grab by text because the text is not in the field name. To grab by text, we need to grab the login button. That's the one actually that has text inside. All right, so we're not gonna grab name password. So it contains attribute name with a value password. We're not gonna do that because I wanted to grab by text. So we will change to button, and then contains, remove this whole parentheses, contains text, and the text is login. So I'm looking for a button that contains text login. So this, and then we can't fill anything. So we're just gonna click it, right? Dot click. So what happens when I provide, I'm gonna update the username to the selected by XPath. password will still be selected by CSS because I'm not updating this. But when I will attempt to log in, I will see your username is invalid. So let's inspect this. It's inside a div, and it's also text. How can we assert this? So we can also use, we can grab this element after. So we can store it, store text, element by text for failed login, and assert it. So we'll do the same thing that we were doing here when we were storing element and then doing assertion. So we can do await page dot locator. And again, when we inspect it, it's a div. So you want to start with / div. Then what's inside it? What are we going to use? We can actually store it by ID flash and then assert that there is a certain text inside of it. So we can say at ID equals flash. Const. So it's going to be error message page locator div at ID flash. Good. So we store the error message, and then we will assert that this stored element inside of it, we actually have a text. Your username is invalid. Okay, so that should get us where we want to be. And let's give it a try. Okay, so there's a problem with the last locator. Some of the code is getting generated as I go, as I type it out with the help of an AI, and I didn't double check. So because the text is actually nested, it's not inside the button element itself, but under I, we could either change the element to the I, the tag here to I button, instead of button put I, and then contains text login like this. So let's run it one more time. Yeah, so when you use text, it will only look directly. So contains text, Text will only look directly into the element itself. So when we were looking at the button, there is no text in the button. The login text in the button itself was nested in the I tag. So if we wanted to do a match without matching the tag I, but just to the button, we need a different search that will be able to traverse and kind of go deeper and look inside the child elements. So instead of contains text, the other way to do it is to do dot. So now it will go through inside the button and go deeper and find the text login with it. So that would be the update here. All right, let's run it, rerun it. And we are all set. So we start, navigate to the page. We find by role button, by role login. We find the text by text. Then we start going with the CSS locators. Then we switch to, after radius, we switch to XPath locators. Selected by XPath, and then we try to log in without a password provided. Found it, clicked. So the username is invalid, is still out there. I think this is from even the previous login attempt with invalid values from the CSS. And it just stays there, and then we assert it. Okay, so all in all, this looks good. So we used here some examples of Playwright Locators, the one that Playwright recommends. And we use some examples of CSS and XPath. So your best bet is just to practice this and type things out. And again, understanding the HTML structure here. What is the tag? What is the attribute? What's the attribute value? And how do you select those? And a good way to get it started is just by using the Playwright documentation and going through the locators that Playwright suggests. All right, so this was Alex USA Days. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.